Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to CalRevs, the chest of the best. The adventurer's best friend. You can get everything you want for just your top half off. Hi. And tonight, we're talking shop. That's right, we're back at it again to talk about the Magnus Protocol, episode 5, filed under CAT 2RB 2377 1001 2 and D23 0502 2024. Episode title Personal Screening. Not much to say about this, except that it, much like every episode that preceded it, and much like any episode that will follow, raises maybe a couple of questions, but it's setting up for something big, something interesting, something. Who knows whether or not it's going to be a big payoff, but I wouldn't put it past them to make it really, really have a bit of impact when it finally comes about. But that's besides the point. I hope everyone is having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, whatever the time is in your neck of the woods. And, well, we're about halfway caught up with regards to the Magnus Protocol. Not much seems to have been. Well, I mean, there's a lot to cover. A lot has been established. We have Sam, who seems to have some sort of connection to the Magnus Institute in some way, shape, or form that he is being a little cagey about, or who knows, maybe no one's asking the right questions with regards to why he's so obsessed with it. But for the time being, it doesn't seem like he has pursued his line of thinking and curiosity, most likely due to the fact that, hey, he's been getting nagged by Alice to drop it, but it's the Magnus world. He's not gonna drop it. We all know that curiosity killed the cat, killed the John, didn't kill John, but, well, curiosity is never a good thing in this world now, is it? But it helps move the plot forward, that's for sure. But anyways, why don't we just go ahead and jump straight into this episode. Episode 5, Personal Screening. The episode starts with Sam coming into Lena's office. Apparently, whatever it is that Alice wanted him to do, he might possibly want to do it now. Which, if I recall correctly, she wanted him to go to Central IT to see if they could maybe come in and do some stuff, because it seemed to her that Colin wasn't doing anything and possibly was making the problems that haunted the system worse. And Sam didn't want to rock the boat, although now he might be changing his mind, as it seems he walks into Lena's office, unannounced and unscheduled, by the way, which apparently Lena doesn't like, and asks to maybe have something brought up regarding Colin's behavior. It seems our IT manager has been seen yanking out cables, muttering to himself, put locks on his door, and seems to go out of his way to avoid cameras. Smart, genre savvy, but it certainly doesn't look good to everyone else in the office, and it certainly wouldn't look good to anyone that isn't in a horror genre, now would it? Lena, however, doesn't seem inclined to do anything but apparently appreciates Sam's candidness and suggests that if he needed support, he would call for it. Basically just sort of hand waves it, while also reminding Sam, and letting him know, rather, that next time he has something important like that, he should really schedule it first. Schedule it first. He returns and gets back to work. Alice notes that Sam is definitely not feeling good in this situation. Not only is he feeling like he's being looked down upon by Lena, but it seems the response department has finally gotten back to him regarding his paperwork. Sam had checked the response 1-to-1 box on his form in episode 1, and now it seems whatever it is that was setting up, it's starting to reveal itself, although it's revealing itself in what can only be described as the very exciting, very engaging paperwork. Nothing much comes out of it. All we really know is that there's a lot of it, from what it sounds like. To the point that Alice tells him that he should really just go ahead and start working and do the paperwork. Not now, essentially. She tells him not to do it, because she doesn't think that anything's going to come up of it. But Sam decides to fill it out anyways. Quote, just to see what happens. Where have I heard that before? But as he sets it aside, he gets a talker, which jumps us into the next incident and the next focus of this episode. Incident report filed CAT2RB 2377 1001 2023 0502 2024. Placing this, of course, in February 5th, 2024, and the incident taking place a year prior in January 10th, 2023. Now, it's focused entirely on a blog space. Apparently www.tomsterrors.blogsphere.org. Now, before anyone on the analysis train tries to check that out, have found nothing at that URL, so don't try it. But it is dictated by Chester. Chester? Yes. Dictated by Chester / John, probably. Johnny, you know? And it focuses on an individual's horror media reviews. Apparently, they started it back in 2009, but after some unspecified reason or event, they have decided to pick it up again, talking about how their interest in horror stems from their father, who watched thousands of weird and obscure horror films over the years together with them. So the writer, the owner of the blog, uses that site to review unknown gems, hoping that readers will like it, like their content, and check out those said films. Not just films, but also video games, books, from the looks of it, possibly. And they end their first post there, essentially. The next things that they post end up being reviews for games and films, but notably, Chester makes a note of saying this out loud: the contents have all been deleted. Until the next post, which ends up being an appreciation post with the OP saying that they've been getting plenty of feedback as well as recommendations in their previous posts. One recommendation that they get is for a film they've never heard before called Voyeur. They haven't found any information on the film, and the only thing that they were able to find relevant to it that isn't, what the word voyeur means is apparently an old blog post with a very short review that simply reads, quote, "Voyeur needs to be seen to be believed. The scariest movie I have ever seen," end quote. And apparently, that's enough to get them deeply interested in tracking it down. They end up getting an update post up and saying that they found a link that was provided by a user. Cinephobia 12220 apparently was the username. One has to wonder about that, but we'll leave that alone for now. The link led them to the official website for the film, which, while they note that it doesn't seem to have been updated in years, it was currently running a contest wherein the winner gets a private screening of the film and a Q&A with the director. So the OP decides to enter, but the form only asks for their name. Despite that, they still aren't able to find a copy of film online, and from that point on, things go quiet. Well, I mean, they post more reviews, but it seems that the contents of those reviews were also deleted. And finally, in another update post, they note that they have won the contest. The OP won the contest and received an invitation sent directly to their address, noting, of course, that they didn't give their address and they just assume that the website must have logged their IP and used that to find them, which, even if you're not genre, this is another level of genre blindness, but we'll leave that alone again. We'll leave that alone for a bit here. But they get invited, and apparently the screening was due for that week on a Saturday at a cinema that they used to go to all the time with their dad, specifically for horror films midday every Saturday. oddly specific time and oddly specific for that screening, but they decide to go, even though they had assumed that the place had closed down years ago. When they finally arrive, well, no, they don't arrive, but they discuss about going to the screening in another update post, and they note that for some reason, they're very hyped for this film, and they don't think that they're going to be disappointed. They get this sinking suspicion that they're certain they're gonna feel the fear this time, as well as having been informed via the invitation that live blogging the event was allowed. Odd, but it's whatever. Eventually, Saturday arrives and they go to the cinema. Apparently, it's this rundown, not too pretty to look at dump, so to speak. They know it's the right place because there is a sign that says Voyeur fan screening sold out, but there's just the one car in the car park and no one else around them. And they start to wonder if they're the only person watching the movie. Again, more genre blindness, but we'll leave that alone. One thing that doesn't quite. Well, I mean, all of this, right? This entire situation is just incredibly like, what the heck is going on here, dude? Don't you think there are a lot of red flags popping up here? It seems like either you got scammed or you're about to get jumped, at least in a world that would be normal, I guess. This already has a lot of red flags, but as he's talking about like what's going on around him, they say something, right? They say that's, and then there's noise. Well, presumably there is noise, but Chester actually dictates unintelligible, and then the sentence continues into cool, actually. So that's cool, actually, but it's dictated as that's unintelligible. Cool, actually. It just very jarringly like breaks up the narrative for a little bit of for a short period of time. And this continues several times throughout the live blogging portion. Maybe it might just be a result of it being live blogged and live dictated to the blog itself. But it's hard to really say. Or, there might be some other spooky business. But again, we'll get to it. The OP goes inside and finds that it's actually a lot cleaner on the inside. Immaculate, in fact. But there is just the one employee, an aged looking worker doing literally everything on his own. Running tickets, running concessions, ushering, everything. And when the OP brings up, how it looks on the outside of the theater, the ushers slash ticket tier concession stand worker, the employee simply and cryptically just goes, "It's what's on the inside that matters." A little creepy, a little bizarre. It wouldn't be the first time something on the inside mattered, wouldn't it? But I'm getting ahead of myself. The guy, despite being the only person working, explicitly customer service job, is in good spirits. And yeah, he just goes about his work, and the OP, while feeling bad for the old man for working by himself, is also in pretty good spirits and pretty excited as well. But they also note that it's just them there. It's just them in that theater. They take their seat. More unintelligible nonsense pops up as they speak, and they eat their popcorn. And then the movie starts. The projector turns on for a single minute. It's just black before eventually he starts to hear beeping noises and notes that it sounds familiar but can't place the memory. Thinks, possibly, that it's medical equipment. And then he sees something on the screen, something unintelligible. And he begins to think that the scene is depicting something of a flashback because it looks like it's being filmed on a camcorder. But then he recognizes the scene. He knows the room that is being viewed in the movie. And he's wondering, in quiet terror, how they got a view of it. He notes that the scene happened after the accident, and that, quote, "Mum wanted to film it for my brothers." They softly call out for their father. It's unintelligible, again, and then they realize that there's someone in the corner of the screen. and they wonder in shock who it could possibly be. And then that post ends. And the next one is a film review post of Voyeur. This time, the contents have not been deleted, and it simply reads, Voyeur needs to be seen to be believed. The scariest movie I have ever seen. End incident. To which, of course, we jump back into the office. Alice is back on the phone with her brother Luke, talking about his band, and then they get into a conversation. It seems that, once again, she is telling her brother to wait until payday, that she'll be able to, quote, cover it, and that she'll, quote, be getting it pretty soon the way things are going. No indication of what it is that they are trying to get back and why her money is being dumped towards it, but I can only assume that at this point in time, it's only going to be revealed slowly, suddenly. Who's to say? Who's to say what it could possibly be at this point in time? But it sounds like with what goes on into the incident and what they are talking about might be very important personally now, wouldn't it? Of course, that's just an obvious analysis at this point. In any case, it's at this point that Gwen pops in, suddenly scares Alice, and very, I don't want to say frantically, but very pointedly, very matter-of-factly, even for Gwen, asks if Alice remembers the IT manager before Colin. Now, I will remind you that last episode, Gwen saw someone begging Lena to spare their life. So this bodes very ill for our IT managers. But Alice says that the manager before Colin was named Amelia, but Gwen clarifies that she wants the one before Amelia, apparently a German guy with lots of tattoos, but Alice remembers nothing except that Amelia mentioned him, mostly to complain about his work. And yeah, ultimately they were there before Alice. Gwen doesn't elaborate what the hell that is supposed to mean and what purpose that she's trying to look into this for, but she goes ahead and just leaves Alice to it. And then the episode ends. Again, not that much. Not that much to go off of. It seems that whatever kernels behind the grand narrative are yet to be fully nurtured or fully have yet to break out of their seed podling at this point in time. So because of that, there's no real way to know what exactly we're going to be seeing in the future. Obviously, since I've already caught up on the on the series at this point in time, I see some of the payoff. Not all of it pays off just yet, but at this point in time, it's setting up some stuff, that's for sure. But for now, we'll just go ahead and just try to break down what the heck happened in this episode. So, first off, right off the back, the incident itself. It's not hard to try and pinpoint which entity is active here. The most likely culprit, without a doubt, without question, is most likely going to be the Eye. I've talked about the Eye before, I believe, but in case anyone hasn't caught up with the series or is unsure or has forgotten, the Eye represents the fear of knowledge, right? It represents the fear that someone knows your secrets, that someone is watching you, whether they are watching you just to watch you or whether they're watching you suffer with the sole intent of just hanging out there to see you suffer. The fear of seeking out knowledge when you know that it would destroy you, the same way that you might ask a question fearing that you know the answer already. That is the Eye. And, well, with what happens in the episode, it's again, it's really not subtle. Voyeur is not exactly subtle. And then it shows scenes from the memories of the incident maker, or, the blog poster, notably a potentially traumatic memory, and then choosing a location of importance to the reviewer. It's hard to look at all of this and be like, oh, it could be someone else. No, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, though there are other aspects of other entities there. Within the context of the Magnus Protocol, this is the second time an eye theme has occurred, and also in the context of online blog as well. The last time was in episode 1. Uh, this time, it's it's scary because in this instance, the eye seems to be taking a much more active approach to its scary business. First of all, I don't know if xenophobia is like a branch, an arm, a an actor for the eye, but that's also quite on the nose as well. Xenophobia, very 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 clever. But if they just magically found the link and then posted it there, that's scary. That's worrying, to say the least. But if we ever see xenophobia again, I kinda highly doubt it. It might have very easily have been just a throwaway account just to create this horrifying incident, but it's hard to say. But it is taking a much more hands-on approach, which I have to say is kind of out of character for the eye. Wouldn't you agree? Even in the last post, while they acted violently, right, and they did something to Red Canary and did their monstrous business, they left a warning and told people to basically stay away from the Institute. It feels like they told people to stay away from the Institute. It's hard to say. Also, I don't know. It feels like the eye is being taking a much more proactive approach compared to what it did in the past. Although, there's the matter of Gertrude and sending out the archivist to take care of any rituals that are occurring out in the world. But then again, it's not like it's not like the eye was the only one going about and disrupting rituals. The slaughter does it too. But here, it's like actively trying to freak people out. I get that it probably did that a couple of times in archives that maybe I don't remember, but it's taken control of the dude's blog, deleted post after post, only allowing it to focus on the movie voyeur. Like, what? I'm just used to the eye being a much more passive observer, you know? However, there are other aspects that you could make a reasonable sort of statement of being present. Desolation, for example, has some potential here. There are some snippets that we see of the OP's like life, right? They mention an accident. They mention what could possibly be the loss of their father. Mother was recording the scene for their brothers as like possibly maybe a final farewell. There seems to be quite interestingly a mix of the eye and the desolation, which, I never really saw, right? That's not something that we saw. If anything, we typically saw the eye and the desolation at odds with each other. Now, despite that, of course, there is one significant connection between the eye and the desolation, and that would be Agnes Montague and Gertrude Robinson. The resulting bond that they suffered, I guess, as a result of meddling by the web, meant that the desolation actually protected, right? The cult of the Lightless Flame actually protected Gertrude on multiple occasions, as it turns out. So maybe you could look at this as being some sort of like a subtle nod to the connection that the eye and the desolation had together. Or maybe it's just like, just in general, the mixing of the two fears, seeing something being taken away from you. Knowing that it's going to be taken away from you and knowing that you are helpless to do anything about it. That's a pretty good mix of those two fears, but it's hard to really say for sure exactly. whether or not you could make the argument. You can make the argument that the desolation is most certainly present in this space. Um there's, I guess, a mix of the death as well. There's a mix of the web, loss of control and being powerless, I guess. And it wouldn't be the first time that the web was associated with directors in movies. But I think, in regards to this incident, looking explicitly at what we have in front of us, I think the strongest connections would be the eye, with some little flecks of the desolation mixed in for good measure. Excuse me, I had to cough there for a second. And I want to make another note of one thing that kind of sort of like makes this incident stand out just a little bit more. And that's the fact that it features the eye, and it's also the second incident that Chester has dictated. The first one being from episode 1, which featured the Magnus Institute and featured eye themes as well, kind of looking a little suspicious. It's kind of looking a little suspicious that, oh, I don't know, Norris seems to be very closely picky with regards to incidents that have themes of loneliness, and then Chester seems to have a preference for what I can only assume to be incidents featuring the eye and knowledge and beholding. It's seeming more and more and more and more like the voices chosen to represent Chester and Norris aren't exactly a random, silly, fun nod towards the previous continuum. I don't think anyone for 1 second believed that to be the case. But it's nice, I guess, to have more and more suspicious, potentially evidence that could support such a hypothesis or theory, I guess. Now, regarding more specifically about the contents of the incident itself, what is the old employee? There is only one other person in this incident explicitly, and that is the old employee. Saying it's what's on the inside that counts seems quite eye-like, if you ask me. Just a bit bizarre. It wouldn't be the first time. There have been at least 2 documented cases, one in archives, the second possibly in protocol, where eyes kind of sort of feature on the inside of a person. The first time in archives, it is in regards to, I believe, what was his name? Albrecht Closen. I forgot what his last name was, but originally the owner of the books that Jonah Magnus stole. And apparently, when he died and the coroner opened him up, they found a bunch of eyes on the inside. Meanwhile, episode 1, we end up with a nun to a very just lovely, beautifully not described scene that is only noted to be gory and feature eyes. So yeah, it's on what's on the inside that counts, huh? Kinda scary. Um Things we should question: are they the same figure that appears in the screen? Are they the director? Because, the screening was also it also was supposed to include a Q&A with the director. Is that the director? Can we look at we can't really look at them as anything short of being an avatar of the eye. The question is where are they now? Where are they now? What are they up to? Should we expect to run into some old moviegoer employee who apparently has eye powers and will cryptically say that it's what's on the inside that counts? Or maybe they were the figure that appears on the screen itself. You know? What's happening there? It's hard to say. And unfortunately, if I recall correctly, I didn't note while listening to the episode that there was any particular location given. So unlike with Maddie, right? Unlike with Maddie, we're not exactly given some sort of like indication of where this could possibly be taking place, and therefore we can't really narrow it down to a stomping grounds of sorts. We can't really narrow it down in terms of like where this guy could possibly appear next, or if they appear in a specific area, whether we should be concerned about that specific area. It's hard to tell, unfortunately. And unfortunately, there's no particularly there's no particular details given to describe the guy other than he's old, essentially. And happy, I suppose. So unfortunately, we're stuck, and that's a dead end. But I guess if we're feeling particularly keen and sharp-eyed or sharp-eared, I guess, we can try to keep an eye out or ear out for a mysterious man that likes movies and likes making people watch movies and eventually get sucked into whatever is going on in the background. With regards to the figure on the screen, again, there's no indication of it being the same person as the director or being the usher slash the single employee. At the very least, we can guess that they must have looked human, considering the blog poster asks who they are rather than what they are. So, there's maybe we have that. Maybe we have that. It's not much to go off of, but we have that at least. However, it brings to mind certain more eye-related creatures and incidents that occur within the world of archives. Personally, while they described it, possibly a human figure being in the corner, I don't know if they were in the corner of the screen or in the corner of like the room in the movie itself. Hard to really say. They don't really tell us. But for me, at least, I imagined at first that maybe it was like Magnus episode 60, Observer Effect. And in that episode, a woman takes a presumably cursed eye mirror, and when she looks into it, it notes that you shouldn't look behind you when looking in the mirror. And so she does. She looks back in the mirror and she gasps in surprise because now behind her there's just a giant face that was watching her. And then she dropped the mirror, it broke, and there was nothing she could do about it. She was basically given the feeling of being followed and watched for the rest of her life until eventually she tried to burn down the Magnus Institute, was caught by police, and died of pneumonia in jail. Fun times. Fun times. However, okay, so that's how I imagined the figure appearing in the movie in this incident of just like a face appearing in the corner and just slowly looming over you no matter where you go. It's scary. It's definitely very scary. But now that I think about it, there was another instance of a mysterious figure that people didn't know that was haunting their memories of something. And that was John. For those spoilers, obviously, if you're not familiar, but John, by sheer virtue or vice of working as the archivist of the Magnus Institute, slowly gains access to the Watcher's myriad powers. And one of those things that, as an avatar of the Eye, that he possesses is basically making someone relive their nightmares, specifically those who have encountered the entities. It's how the Eye feeds. It feeds on the fear of someone knowing your secrets and the fear of you suffering just for someone else to watch. And that's what John did. He didn't like doing it, right? And he tried not to be like that, but he couldn't help himself, so he says. And he would go out and he would find those he had taken statements from. And some people he would appear in their dreams. And basically, in those dreams were reliving the nightmares and the horrific, supernatural, weird incidents that they had survived through, but being forced to live it all over again. All while John watched again, except this time it would be in their dreams. I'm just saying, there is a possibility, right? I think that there is a very strong possibility that maybe the figure that was seen in that movie could have been, if not John, then definitely an avatar of the eye. In case there was any doubt, there is strong evidence based on prior knowledge that it could be someone making them relive their trauma. And it kind of sort of makes sense. They're forcing them to relive, maybe not a entity associated trauma specifically, but rather the fear of loss that could be indicative of the desolation, except this time with the added bonus of someone watching. There we have the eye. So here we have not only a potential blending of the fears, yet again, we have someone feeding explicitly off that fear. We have an eye avatar feeding specifically off that blended fear and appearing in a manner quite similar to how an avatar of the eye has appeared in people's dreams before in the past. Is it John? No way to know. I don't think John would be so hostile. At least not the John that we know and love. There's no way to really know, again, whether or not Chester/John is the John that we know and love. He's displaying a lot of things that would indicate that it's John, but there's nothing to say that it's the same John that we know. But if it is John, and John is being a much more active avatar for the eye, and more readily being an avatar of the eye, that may give cause for concern. I don't want to imagine John has become a bad guy, and I'm certain Martin wouldn't let John become the bad guy, especially with what they've been through and what they've fought to protect, prevent, reverse, fix. But if it is John, that is not good. And it means, what the heck is he doing? What's he planning? With Freddy, with the gathering of incidents, like, what is the game here, John? If you are the bad guy, if he's the good guy and he's doing what he did in archives, which is not control his hunger, then I guess there's nothing to really be done about that. You're just not. I guess it's nice to know that you're consistent, but still, you could have learned to be better by this point, surely. Either way, it's an eye avatar, and they're clearly not much more friendlier compared to previous avatars of the eye, even when considering Elias and his more bloodthirsty tendencies and impulses. This is a bit much, even for him. Gertrude was ruthless, but she never tried to convert someone into an avatar of the eye. So I whatever is going on here, whoever it is, they are actively trying to spread the eye's influence. And if it's John, it's bad. If it's not, it's still bad, but that means we should, I don't know, be careful of any VC, VHS tapes that depict a well in the middle of the woods kind of situation, it seems. And yeah, I get it's also interesting that the eye should be utilizing the internet a lot more, but I guess considering how Freddy is operating these days, in considering all the, just how the internet works, I guess it just kind of makes sense that it would like to use the internet too, now wouldn't it? But that's all that happens really there. With regards to what's going on in the office, Not much. Not much is really going on here. Gwen seems to be doing her own personal investigations into something, right? It seems she's managed to narrow down her potential list of suspects of whoever it was that Lena killed to a previous IT manager, specifically the one that came before Amelia and Colin. So about, if Alice has been there for a couple of years, then maybe at least 10 plus years, give or take. That's a lot of time to cover, but for some reason, Gwen is looking into it. Although it is curious that she hasn't decided to take that and bring it to, I don't know, higher authorities, police. They do work for the government, after all. Quite curious that she is in doing her own investigations, but one has to wonder why she's doing her investigations in the first place. And of course, we are stuck wondering, why did she get that video in the first place as well? Rather curious. Kind of interesting that Lena, despite having partaking in a job that allows them to basically access any piece of technology and media in the entire world, question mark, everything seems to be quite British centric at this point. Uh and yet she can't note when she gets like a security alert when Sam is doing his snooping, or when a mysterious email shows up in Gwen's inbox depicting Lena murdering someone. Lots of if my hypothesis of the OIAR being under attack by some avatar of the eye is to be considered true, which is being generous, I admit, they're definitely doing it in a very interesting way. They're definitely doing it in a sense that feels like they're just playing up the office politics. And there's no way to really know. I know I say take a shot every single time I say there's no way to really know at this point in time, but there's no way to really know at this point in time. It feels like a concentrated effort by something or someone to get the OIAR to do something other than its job description. But it also wants something else, specifically from, I guess, individual members in the group. It doesn't feel like anyone is explicitly being targeted, like, say, John was in Archives. Like, in the end, it's revealed that John, being the centerpiece of it all, serves more than just to be a narrative and audience surrogate. There's an actual purpose to it. But with how everything kind of sort of seems to like swap a little bit and pieces at a time, it's hard to say whether or not this is just like for narrative sake, or if there's an explicit purpose behind sending Gwen this email, sending Sam, or getting Sam to look into this stuff, telling Alice that Sam is looking into this stuff, not telling Lena, who was in charge of the office in the first place. If this is an attack, it's a very weirdly, the strategy and the tactics behind it are an enigma. And it's so impossible to see what the end goal is here, especially when we don't know what the stakes are, aside from the entities coming into the world. That's probably the biggest stake in this situation, is that the entities break into this world this time with, who knows, maybe like full knowledge of what it takes to get into the world. That would make sense too, right? It would feel like this sudden influx of explicit blending of fears in incidents and with avatars. It makes it feel like the eye knows, right? That the entities kind of sort of survived their trip to this place. And they know what they need to do if they want to get into the world again. And that's why we're seeing all these incidents where it's debatable what entity is at work, what fear is being preyed upon, when a lot of them are sort of meshing, melding together, and they're also spreading their influence, it seems, a little more proactively, with the explicit purpose of, I guess, trying to make more avatars. It's almost as if they're trying to rush the process, I guess, or they're taking steps towards making this process. Who's they? Could be the entities. Maybe they know what they need to do and they're not meddling against each other, or maybe they're curbing their impulses and instincts, and their avatars in this world are not trying to interfere with each other. We haven't seen any such instance of avatars fighting amongst each other at this point in time. Not yet, perhaps, maybe not ever, because it really seems to feel like they know how to do this, and they know that that's what they need to do in order to come back. But at the same time, if they know what they need to do to come back, then surely they know what they will need to do after as well. Like, it feels like it's like they're going to basically rush towards dinner by breaking into the world, and then they're going to have to move on into the next world, right? At this point in time. But I'm just rambling at this point in time. I just realized I rambled and I lost complete track of what I was gonna go on with, what point I was gonna bring with that. Just wild mass speculation at this point. Wild singular speculation at this point in time. But, it raises a couple of implications, because if the entities understand that they need to blend the fears in order to break into the world, then that means they didn't have this knowledge beforehand, right? Like, it would feel like, sure, maybe they don't think in the same way that we do, but if they can have that knowledge, then maybe Magnus Archives is their universe of origin. And now that they have spread to a new one, they're on New Game Plus, basically, where they have the knowledge. Now they just need the tools and the party to bring this about. But then again, the question is, are they going to want to bring that about when they know what's going to happen? Or if they can even perceive of the consequence that they were dealing with. Obviously the end would comprehend that would be the end result again, right? The web obviously would know that is the end result again, because the two of them are planners. The eye, not so much, but at this point in time, it has garnered the necessary knowledge to know that this is what's going to happen if it does this. But is its nature going to allow it to happen, or is its nature going to try to bring about a different outcome compared to last time? Does its knowledge carry over, and does it know that this is what happened last time? Because it can't perceive of the future either, but that doesn't mean that it can't act in accordance to what happened in the past. But this is, of course, me ascribing human characteristics to an unknowable and incomprehensible eldritch literal horror. So, wild mass speculation once again, but it's because of that looking at the way things are, how information is spreading to various people within the office and in specific ways, and getting them to behave in specific ways. I don't know. It could be the web. The web could be pulling the strings as it usually does, very on brand and in character for the web to be doing these things. If it's the eye's not a planner, but if it is the eye, then someone has to be doing it. Would absolutely make sense for it to maybe be John. Dude was touched by the web from a young age after all, but he was never much of a manipulator, so maybe that's not the case. But then again, around the end of season 5, Annabelle does note that Martin had very strong potential to be an avatar of the web, so who knows? Maybe Miss Spider did get her claws in on that boy in the end after all, and now he has the full capabilities of planning that far ahead with that many unknowable consequences already waiting in the wings. And that could be one of the reasons why these specific emails are going to specific people. We already know that those two are in the world, we just don't know what they're trying to do. It's all just really working based off of what we know from archives and using that as a basis for what we can predict to happen in protocol. That feels like it's obvious, but it's good to state the obvious sometimes just to re-ground yourself and remember exactly what is going on. And I guess the thing that I'm wondering is, are we correct in guessing that the entities are trying to get into the world again? Or is there the potential for there to be another goal at this point in time? Or has the end game for the entities changed due to them coming to a new world and knowing what it takes to break through the thin fabric that separates their immaterial world to our material reality? I am so glad I am not doing this analysis stuff drunk. But with that, that brings our episode to a close. I understand if it was a bit hard to follow, I did kind of sort of lose track of myself at the end there too. What can I say? That's what this platform is for, baby. But with that, that puts an end to our deep dive analysis. I feel like it's not that deep of a dive considering how it feels kind of sort of surface level, especially when we don't have that much information, but analysis for sure, I guess. That brings it to a close. We will of course be continuing this next time, which should be tomorrow, same time. We are halfway through, right? We are halfway through and almost caught up with the series properly. By the end of next week, the next episode should be out, but we'll keep analyzing each episode by episode, as we go along. So I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive. I hope for those of you who have not, for some god's awful reason, decided to pick up the series proper, go do that. Go do that. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal. And my short summaries of the episodes don't do the series, don't do the episodes, don't do the voice acting and the story enough justice. So please check it out. And with that, thank you guys so much for popping in, hanging out, being your beautiful selves. I deeply appreciate it. With that being said, shop's closed. Get out. Bye-bye, guys.